Trying to fill all the boxes is what takes away the fun from a lot of these movies. Hey everyone, my name is Max Aaron James. This is a review of the movie Talk to Me, written by Bill Heinzman, Daley Pearson, and Danny Philippou. Hope I pronounced the last name right. It is directed by Danny and Michael Philippou. It is about teenagers who get a thrill from conjuring up spirits using an embalmed hand, but things get a bit too far and supernatural forces decide to stick around and endangering some of the characters. Before I get into some of the good stuff, I'd like to point out a couple bad marks I would give it, especially in the beginning of the movie. First, the cold open. Often, or I would say in most movies, at least recently, you see the cold open of presenting characters that we can expect not to connect with or really know anything about aside from this open, and we will likely not follow them for the rest of the movie because something will happen to them. So you present these characters in this environment that, again, is just for this moment, something happens and then we go forward. I feel oftentimes this is unnecessary, although I know it is used to hook the audience. I know it is to set the tone and present the dangers for the protagonist and show what is at stake or what the risks are for the protagonist moving forward, show what they are up against. But again, this is not necessary, and I feel if you are able to just tell a good story and present and do good enough world building, why do this? Next, character intros and character development. Again, with many of these movies, it feels very slow when presenting the characters, oftentimes using these minutes to only present what traumatic or tragic incident the characters dealt with. In both Talk to Me and Boogeyman, both protagonists deal with the very same issue. It is a teenage girl who lost a mother. So it feels very lazy, and these are not the only two movies that deal with these same things. You always have a single father having to take care of children, and they lost their mom some time ago, and these supernatural spirits that are wanting to harm these characters use the mother to hurt them, and the mother could either be with or against the family. And there are at least 3 mentions of this tragic event happening to the character before we even get into the shits. I feel you should be wanting to develop the character as you go on their journey. And you can mention these events throughout, but it just feels they had to make sure you know what this character Mia is dealing with, and hopefully you feel bad for this character, feel sympathy or become empathetic for them, even though in reality I never did. Now some good stuff. This movie is actually pretty fun and has a really fun concept, at least in the first half. You have this embalmed hand that is brought to parties, and people use it to conjure up spirits, and it presents a euphoric feeling to these teenagers. I would argue that some of these teenagers become addicted to this feeling. It is almost like a drug, and going to parties, indulging in potentially dangerous or harmful substances, I understand. I think a lot of us understand, especially with teenagers or people in their early 20s. I'll admit I have done some stuff and I get it, right? The dangers and yet the thrill of it. There's thrill, there's addiction, there's fun that I feel I'm in and experiencing with these teenagers as they're going through and doing these things. It's kind of a mix of frightening and humorous, and when you put those together well, it's a good experience, especially as a movie. I feel if they went with this a little further or committed to this, it would have been a really good execution. A lot of this reminded me of Flatliners, the new one being pretty bad and the original having a really good concept but easily or obviously flawed. This was a perfect opportunity to present a good execution of that concept, but they choose not to. The movie takes a sharp turn into a boringly dark place. It felt it was trying to check boxes for industry's sake and trying to check boxes for film festival's sake. This movie was presented at a film festival, and I already have an issue with major film festivals overall feeling that a lot of the people that enter or are able to enter have money, know someone, or have a big enough budget in presenting the type of film they want. You can argue with me on that, but we see it. And there are these boxes that many times filmmakers feel they need to check in order to win or be able to enter or get their film presented in theaters. One of those things being a deep emotional journey with the characters. And it felt very inorganic with Mia. At no point did I feel I needed to cheer or root for Mia. At no point did it feel I needed to like her And just because something bad happens to you does not make you a good person. She is selfish, she lacks empathy, she is unaware, she is cruel and mean, and she believes that she cares for other people, but from what is presented to us, the audience, I do not think she really cares. I really like the party duo played by Zoe Terex and Chris Alosio. They were fun. At no point did we need to have a character introduction and character development before we got into the stuff with them. You were able to build a relationship with them and understand who they are and what they enjoy doing and what their motives are without presenting that backstory. I understood them and enjoyed their personalities, which came through while in this journey. And I feel I would have become really sad, if anything were to happen to these characters. And I did not need to know some tragic event happened to them or where they come from or what they're into or what their relationship really is with one another or with these other characters, including Mia. I really liked the little boy as well. He was cool. I felt bad for him, especially him being a victim, an innocent victim to what is transpiring. He's just there, a young kid who just happens to get in the crossfire because of someone's selfish decisions. Also, Mia, our protagonist, is a hypocrite in a couple ways. And it is not a bad thing to present a character who you realize has become the one thing they try to avoid or try to fight off and show personality traits that they tend to complain about previous or early in the movie, but at no point did I feel that she became aware, she recognized it, she learned from it, or even as the audience, at no point did I feel I was learning something from her decisions or bad decision making. She accuses her father of at least two things that cause a rift or damage her relationship with her father, but she ends up presenting those two same qualities in herself, and again, nothing changed by the end of the movie. And maybe they wanted to present a character that you are not supposed to like or you're supposed to recognize as completely flawed, but still want to journey with them. And we've seen that before, most recently with Succession. Every character in that show is a bad person, and I would not agree with a lot of their ideals or decisions that they've made. But you understand them, you can relate to them in some respects, and the journey with them was fun and humorous and yet also tense and suspenseful. And you still recognize that these are cruel people, another one being Tony Soprano. Still, here, at no point, again, with Mia, did I feel bad for her. I was more interested in following every other character in this movie. I did not care for Mia's friend and her friend's boyfriend. The romantic aspect I did not care about. I also did not need the history of Mia and her friend's boyfriend to get to a certain scene and understand why her and her friend end up falling apart. Now, when we get to the ending, I was not sure what was going on or what happened, which is fine. That's up for audience interpretation. That's cool. But so much was going on and happening, it felt that they were purposely trying to confuse you. Also, when you are in another country or presenting characters in another country, we can read subtitles, so you do not need them to speak English. There are characters presented at the end in assumably another country, and they are speaking another language, but just before it cuts off, the character speaks English that was just speaking a different language prior. That's a minor gripe I have. Whenever people go to other countries, it feels as if they need to speak English or the primary language of the movie. Now here's what they could have done. I wrote some notes about this because it is a very fun concept, and I feel they could have stuck with that throughout the entire movie. They could have had someone become so addicted that they end up fighting or trying to steal the hand from the other group of friends. They could have had the group of friends end up pushing out other people, family, other friends that are not involved in this, and it's damaging their relationships with them and damaging their relationships with one another. They could have had it similar to Flatliners, where they start seeing things but they do not know if it's really there, or there is that risk of being in it too long that they end up harming themselves or harming other people. I still think they could have kept the dead mother angle and still kept going with this, presented the risk of death and the potentials of death within the group of friends, and as everyone becomes closer with one another. I feel there is a good movie that could have come from this, and potentially a good movie hidden in this, because I don't know if there was any reason to move away from what was presented in the first half of the movie. A lot of the characters we end up getting rid of and completely removing them from this movie going into the second half, or at least the final acts of this film. Maybe they were not sure how to finish the story and how to get to the ending, so they just rushed through it and they just filled in their 90-minute mark, right? Filled in their 90-minute time. I appreciate 90-minute movies. And so, I went into this having fun for most of it, but coming out feeling that there was a missed mark. Overall, I would say check it out. Again, it's a fun concept and maybe something to talk about and think of what could have happened. And I think that's a sign, for me at least, when I leave the theater and I think of all the things that could have happened or could have been done better, is a sign that the movie missed the mark or was unaware of what was given to it, of this treasure that was given to the directors, that came to the directors, even if they thought of the idea. Anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts on this movie. Talk to me. What'd you think about it? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What'd you think of the review? Until next time, y'all take care of each other. Check up on one another. Be sure to check up on yourself. And remember, potential has no limit.